All right, today we're diving into The Lean Startup by Ries. And look, this isn't just another business book. This is the one that totally flipped the script on how we think about building companies and launching new things. It's basically a new roadmap for navigating the chaos of a new venture, a way to steer away from failure and directly toward success. And this quote, man, it just cuts right to the chase. The reality is, most new things don't make it. But here's the powerful part. Ries is saying that it's not just bad luck. This isn't just fate. A lot of those failures could have been avoided if they just followed a different process.
So yeah, that's the big question, right? If these failures are preventable, what's the secret sauce? How do you actually engineer a business to succeed when everything is so uncertain? Well, that is exactly what we're going to unpack.
Okay, so before we get to the solution, we really have to dig into the problem itself. Why is it that the default setting for so many amazing ideas, for so many brilliant teams, is to just crash and burn?
You know, the author, Ries, he lived this nightmare. He tells this gut-wrenching story of his first company going under. I mean, can you imagine pouring your heart, your soul, all your time into something, convincing everyone you know that it's the next big thing, only to stand there in the rain, literally arguing as the last of the money runs out? This isn't some abstract business school problem. It's a deeply painful personal one.
So why does this happen over and over again? Well, it turns out that most entrepreneurs are basically working from a broken playbook. They're using old-school management advice that just completely falls apart in the real, chaotic world of startups.
And usually, they fall into one of two traps. On one hand, you've got the rocket launch approach. You know, write this massive, perfect business plan, then execute it perfectly. The huge problem with that, you're basically betting that you can predict the future. Then, on the other extreme, you have the just do it crew. They throw out all planning, all management, and just dive into the chaos. The thing is, both of these paths, they usually lead right off the same cliff.
And this, right here, is the perfect analogy for the whole thing. Launching a rocket is an all-or-nothing event. Once you press that button, its path is set. The tiniest miscalculation at the start leads to total disaster. But building a startup, that should be like driving a car. You have a destination, for sure, but you also have a steering wheel. You need to be able to turn, to react to traffic, maybe take a detour. You need that steering wheel, not a pre-programmed flight path.
So if the old playbooks are broken, what's the alternative? Well, the Lean Startup asks us to make a really fundamental shift. It's about taking the art of entrepreneurship and turning it into a science. First things first, we need to redefine what a startup even is, and the magic words here are under conditions of extreme uncertainty. That's it. That's the key. So a startup isn't about being small or being in a garage. It could be a huge team inside a Fortune 500 company. If you're operating in the fog of the unknown, congratulations, you're a startup. Okay, so when you're swimming in all this uncertainty, what's the single most valuable thing you can do? It's learn. But here's the catch. We're talking about a special kind of learning. It's called validated learning. And we're not talking about some feel-good story you spin to investors after you've already crashed and burned. No way. This is about rigorously proving with cold, hard data from real customers that your ideas are actually true. That becomes the new yardstick for progress.
So how do you actually do that? How do you achieve this validated learning? Well, it all comes down to a simple, repeatable process, an engine that drives the whole startup forward.
The story of Ries's next company, IMVU, is the perfect example. On paper, their idea was genius, an avatar add-on for chat programs like AIM. They worked like crazy for 6 months building this thing. They launched it, and absolute silence. Crickets. Nobody cared. But by actually talking to the few people who tried it, they had a painful realization. Their whole idea was wrong. People didn't want to chat with their existing friends. They wanted a new place to meet new people. It was a brutal lesson that forced a complete change of direction.
And this is so important. The biggest waste in a startup isn't writing sloppy code or being inefficient. It's the waste of building a beautiful, perfect product that nobody wants. All that passion, all those late nights, all for something built on a flawed idea. The question that haunted Ries, the one at the very heart of this method, was, could we have learned that same lesson, but way faster and with way less effort? The answer is a huge yes. And the secret is this engine right here, the build, measure, learn feedback loop. The whole point isn't just to go through the loop, it's to get through it as fast as humanly possible. The speed at which you learn is your new unfair advantage. So, you build the smallest, simplest version of your idea, the minimum viable product. Then you measure how real customers react. And finally, you learn from that data whether you should keep going, persevere, or make a major change in strategy, a pivot.
Okay, so you might be thinking, this sounds great for some tech startup in a garage, right? But this framework, these ideas, they aren't just for software. This is a universal method for dealing with uncertainty, and it works everywhere. Let's talk about Zappos. Their biggest, riskiest assumption was this: will people actually buy shoes online without trying them on first? Now, the old way would be to build a huge website, lease a warehouse, stock it with inventory, but they didn't do that. Their first experiment was it was genius. They went to local shoe stores, took pictures of the shoes, and posted them online. If someone bought a pair, they'd just run back to the store, buy it, and ship it. It was the cheapest, fastest way to prove their entire business model was viable.
It even works for giant companies like Intuit. See, their TurboTax software had one massive launch per year. This created a culture of politicians, where people had to spend all their time defending their one big idea. By switching to a system of rapid, small experiments, we're talking over 500 in one season, they changed the culture. It became a company of entrepreneurs. It let the customers decide what was good, not just the person with the best PowerPoint presentation.
And hey, it's not just for websites and software. Think about a laundry service in India. The village laundry service had a simple question: will people in this neighborhood pay for this? Their first MVP wasn't a storefront. I mean, you've got to love this. They literally bolted a washing machine onto the back of a truck, drove it to a street corner, and started washing clothes. That simple test taught them everything they needed to know about what customers really want.
And get this, it even works for the government. Seriously, when the US government wanted to create the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, instead of a 10-year planning process, they could test the core idea first. Set up a simple hotline in a few neighborhoods. See what kinds of problems people actually call about. Learn what works on a small scale before rolling it out to the entire country.
So what's the big takeaway from all this? It boils down to these core ideas. Entrepreneurship isn't just for startups. It can be anywhere. It's a specific kind of management tailored for extreme uncertainty. And the entire purpose of a startup is to learn how to build a sustainable business, using that fast build, measure, learn loop. And the most powerful idea of all, success is not a lottery ticket. It's not just luck. It's something you can actually engineer. You can build a process for it.
So I want to leave you with a question, a challenge really, for whatever you're working on, a new business, a project at work, even just a personal goal. Before you spend the next 6 months in a dark room building out your grand vision, just stop and ask yourself, what is the most important assumption I'm making right now? And what's the absolute fastest, cheapest way I can test if it's true? Because your next step shouldn't just be about building. It should be about learning.